talk about Newcastle United. Pete, can you update us, please, on their most recent sales? And actually, did their last-minute deals really save them potentially from FFP sanctions going forwards?
Yeah, obviously Newcastle were facing a 50 million hole in their transfers with regard to PSR regulation. So reluctantly for them, Eddie Howe's had to cash in on a couple of players, younger players. We saw Elliot Anderson make that move to Nottingham Forest for around £30 million, which I think a lot of people have raised eyebrows about the price tag for him as well. But he's a good young player, can play in several positions, and Nottingham Forest feel they have got a good deal there for Elliot Anderson. And then also we saw Yakubu Minta make the move to Brighton for around £33 million as well. Again, that one probably did raise a few question marks, as not a lot of people know much about Minta. He was signed from Odense for around £6.5 million, then went on loan to Feyenoord, had a very good season out in Holland, it's fair to say, and there has been interest from a number of clubs, but I think that's good business by Newcastle, getting that type of transfer fee from Brighton for him. Eddie Howe didn't really want to lose either of those two players, but I think he realised he had to sell to those younger players to ensure that he didn't lose some of his more established players, the likes of Bruno Guimaraes, Alexander Isak, Anthony Gordon. So he's had to sort of take one on the chin and sell those two players to sort of balance the books at Newcastle, and he'll be hoping it doesn't come back to bite him, because those two players, if they go on and have good careers at Forest and Brighton, it'll be Newcastle who have lost out, really.
Paul, is it fair that the fans on social media were disappointed to see both of them go? And actually, going forwards, do the FFP rules need to change so that, say, selling homegrown talent like someone like Elliot Anderson actually doesn't just benefit you from a financial fair play point of view?
Well, yeah, the financial fair play rules are going to change, aren't they? I think they're changing imminently. So it's a difficult one for clubs to take. They're obviously all in a very similar situation, because we see a lot of these youngsters that have been sold for big fees. And it has to change, because you question the point in having the academy. The point in having the academy at big clubs is to bring players through. I mean, into the first team with not just a value, but you're almost acting like a small club with an academy, because when you look in League One and League Two, academies are there to bring players through for the first team. But if they get a real diamond in the rough, they will sell their academy starlet, and that will keep the club funded for the next 12, 18, 24 months, however long that is. So lower league clubs look to their academies to fund the club, to bring players through, yes, initially, but when they get a good one, they sell the player on, and it funds the club in a way. But actually, when you're a club the size of Newcastle, Manchester City, etc., who are having to toe the FFP line and PSR lines, you bring these young players through, and they're not going to get an opportunity. So it's quashing players' opportunities to get to the first team in the club that they've come through the academy at, because it's a quick fix, it's an easy sale. It goes straight onto the books as profit. And actually, it does need to change, and it does need to be looked at for that sole reason, even if it's changing that rule about the homegrown players that go on as profit. Because then you're looking at the academy, you're looking at the staff, and you're looking at players that have developed at a club. And, fans always have an attachment to a homegrown player. There's something special about one of your own coming through the ranks, and actually selling those players on for financial gain, when actually a club like Newcastle, you don't have to do it other than to abide by rules. Newcastle got no reason to sell their best young players other than to balance the books. So rules do have to change.
What does it mean now, Pete, for the likes of Bruno Guimaraes, Alexander Isak's future? Are we now expecting some of those big stars to stay now that they have sold some of those youngsters?
Yeah, fully expect both players to be playing for Newcastle next season. As I said, is one that Eddie Howe had to take. He had to cash in on those other players, the likes of Anderson, who was homegrown, pure profit. They had to sell him. They sold Minta as well, who he would have liked to have kept at the club long term, but it was a sort of means of keeping hold of Isak and Guimaraes and Anthony Gordon that he had to do that. Obviously, Bruno Guimaraes had that release clause in his contract. That has now expired, so Newcastle don't have to worry about that anymore for now. So I fully expect Bruno to start the season for Newcastle. Alexander Isak had a bit of interest from Chelsea, who had made inquiries about him, but Newcastle were determined to keep hold of their top goal scorer. Obviously, they did try and price Chelsea out of a move for him by demanding a huge price tag for the Swede as well. So yeah, Isak's happy at Newcastle. Talks are ongoing over a new contract there to reward him. So I would fully expect Newcastle to get that tied up. And good news for Newcastle fans that they've managed to keep hold of those two players, because there was a lot of speculation that maybe one might have to be sold in the summer transfer window. So that's a huge bonus for Eddie Howe and everybody connected with Newcastle. But yeah, as I said, he's had to sacrifice these two younger players to ensure that he keeps hold of his more senior established first team players as well. And as I said, for Newcastle, if they want to be back challenging for the top four next season, it was imperative that they kept hold of Isak and Bruno Guimaraes, who are their two best players.
Rumours continue to swell, though, Pete, around Miguel Almiron's future. Are we expecting an exit this summer from St James's Park, and what's his valuation in today's market?
Yeah, again, another player who was linked with a move in January. There was interest from the Saudi Pro League. That hasn't gone away. That interest is still there, and I do expect that interest to be firmed up with bids for Almiron in the summer transfer window. He is one player that I think Eddie Howe would maybe move on for the right price if it allowed him to reinvest in the squad elsewhere. So I think for Almiron, he's a good player for Newcastle, probably underrated for the job that he does do for the team. He sets the press. He's a hard-working player. He goes a bit unnoticed maybe by some fans, but yeah, he's been a good servant to the club, having been brought in from the MLS quite a few years ago. So I think you're probably looking around probably 25 to 30 million pound mark for him. If they can get that from any of these Saudi Pro League clubs, it will allow Eddie Howe to go out and bring in a new winger, and he definitely is looking for a new right-sided winger, an inverted one, a bit like Almiron, but yeah, somebody who's more direct maybe than him, and I'm sure that's what the recruitment team at Newcastle are doing right now. Paul Mitchell has been confirmed as the new director of football there to replace Dan Ashworth. So yeah, it'll be all systems go now for Newcastle. They have got the recruitment team in place, and I expect them maybe to offload Almiron if they can to the Saudi Pro League and then use that money elsewhere to bring in a direct replacement.
You've just watched a segment from Football Insider's brand new podcast, The Inside Track, with me, Lewis Pearce, alongside the guests on the show. Thanks very much for tuning in. Please do give the video a like, comment your thoughts on the topic, and feel free to share on your social media pages. If you want to listen to the full podcast episode, click the link in the description below. Keep your eyes peeled for plenty more content and exclusives here on The Inside Track.